everybody, and welcome to episode 2 of Becoming Precious Somewhere in Bali. So shout out to everybody who watched the first episode, for your love, your light, your comments. I appreciate y'all. Make sure you share, make sure you like, make sure you subscribe so you can be in tune with the next episode and what's coming up next. I'm excited about taking this journey with you guys and unfolding, unpacking, and sharing my experience. In this second episode, I'm going to walk you through my experience where I focus on each step of the way to get from Atlanta to LA to Bali. Like, what was the experience like in terms of preparing? We're going to talk about vaccination. We're going to talk about visas. We're going to talk about food. We're going to talk about all the things, right? The scenery, everything you want to probably know about my experience in Bali. I'm going to walk you through it. And then I'm going to talk about what I was able to experience within my first 10 days, how it made a difference. So buckle your seatbelt. We are on a mission to make amazing shit happen as I share with you on Becoming Precious Somewhere in Bali. All right, so traveling internationally while we're still in what's considered a real pandemic, right? So if you watched the first episode, then you know a little bit already. I touched on about how I was able to travel from Atlanta to LA and then from LA basically to Bali. Well, in between that LA to Bali experience, a whole bunch of shit had to happen. So I'm going to walk you back through that experience. For me, it was really about being able to maximize on my time and not allow myself to get overwhelmed with how short amount of the time I had and how much. So spending time with family and friends was important, but also handling business to get into another country was also important. One of those things that I had to do was make a decision about if I wanted to get the vaccine or not. And so I made that decision because, of course, going into another country, you want to make sure that you're safe, make sure you're not in a position of not following the rules and get kicked out before you even get put in. And so I got my first set of vaccine when I was in LA, as I was preparing, getting stuff together and winding down that time and that space to be able to get ready for this journey across the world. And so I hosted 2 retreats in Atlanta, and then I traveled to one of my favorite places in the world, Sedona, Arizona, and hosted 2 retreats there as well. And then once I wrapped up all 4 retreats, I stayed in Arizona for an extra week and attended the Deepak Chopra Whole Health Retreat just for myself. That was actually the start of me giving myself my undivided attention before I went to Atlanta to spend more time with Brittany, family, and friends. Plus, I'd spent time in New York and LA with other family and friends. It was time to board my flight to Bali, Indonesia. So once I decided that I was going to take this trip and really give myself the best of the best, because baby, if you don't know it already, you absolutely deserve your best. So in flying first class, 24 hours across the world, I decided to go with Qatar Airlines. So shout out to Qatar. It was the best experience ever. First class, video monitor to show you the front of the plane, the back of the plane. Baby, they asked me if I wanted sea bass. For dinner, I had rosé unlimited, dessert, pajamas, facial, eye mask, slippers, and of course my own private cot. Anything that you could possibly, or pod, anything you could possibly think of that you wanted or needed, you had it on the first class flight. And so it was absolutely amazing. I slept the majority of the way. So a lot of people are like, oh my gosh, how can you fly for 24 hours? But when you've already had all of this adrenaline and you've been ready, the time difference helps because you're going to sleep and so we flew from Atlanta at night. So that was already in my bedtime flow. And then of course I slept for those first 8 hours, 8 to 9 hours. And then I got up, walked around. We made a pit stop in Doha. And then from Doha, we landed in Jakarta. Now, Jakarta is where, of course, Jakarta is the capital of Indonesia, and it's also where I spent my 8-day quarantine. Now, I mentioned to y'all in episode 1 that I thought, and I was informed, that my quarantine would be for 5 days. And during my travel and preparation, I found out my quarantine had went from 5 days to 8 days because things were changing in Indonesia as I was preparing and traveling too. So if you're thinking about traveling international, just allow yourself the flexibility and freedom for things to change, because your plan may not go specifically and according to how you think it should, or you planned it or wanted it to, just because some things are out of your control. So I rolled with the punches, and I was in Jakarta for that 8-day quarantine. Now let's talk about the quarantine. Man, oh man, oh man. 8 days in Jakarta, capital of Indonesia. Jakarta, I think, for me, would be akin to a New York, but a little bit drier because of the makings of the country. The country is different than America. But those 8 days, I'm not even gonna bullshit you. The 8 days was gruesome. Between finding out that Brittany was pregnant and being isolated, not being able to take fresh air. I made a workout video. I FaceTimed a lot. I slept. I got anxious. I pulled MASH cards. I watched a lot of Netflix, but I was limited because I was watching the Indonesian Netflix, which doesn't give the same amount of options or what I'm used to or accustomed to. So there was already a lot of adjustments that needed to be made to my mindset, to my expectations. And I was able to do so in those 8 days, including my sleep and the time difference. There is a 12 to 13 hour time difference depending on where you are. The place that I was traveling to next was Ubud, which is the quintessential Bali experience when you think about going to the part of the country in Indonesia where there's meditation and yoga and green, lush rice fields everywhere you look and turn. That's going to be your Ubud experience. And so one of the things that I did before I got to Indonesia, before I got to Bali, and really early on in my decision to travel, was I connected with an amazing group on Facebook called Black in Bali. Shout out to everybody who's a part of that community. We've been able to partner together since I've been here, and they've been a big help just in the creation of that community on Facebook. Once I got in, I saw that there was a sister who had already arrived in Bali, and this was back in April, and she introduced herself into the group, and so I slid into her DMs, and we became friends fast. So I had someone on the other side who was already there, and of course, y'all know what I like to say, that's God moving the universe on my behalf. So by the time I got to Jakarta, she was checking in on me, making sure that I arrived safely. She sent me videos of options of places I could live, different villas with the pool in the front of the yard. And of course, you got your house managers and housekeepers who make sure that your stay is absolutely amazing. So having someone who you can connect with on the other side just helps for your experience to be a little bit more smoother, and also you can have a realistic expectation on what you can expect to experience once you land, because of course news and the different articles and stuff that you see aren't always people who are in the middle of living in that experience, so they may not be the most accurate. But when you have somebody who's actually living or visiting there before you get there, it's just a big huge help. If you don't have that option, don't worry, do it anyway. So I got to Jakarta, and on my 8th day, I woke up at 2 o'clock in the morning. There's a flight that you have to take because Jakarta is on a whole nother island called Java Island. And so you have to take a flight from Jakarta to Ubud, which is a whole nother part of the island. You either gonna go by flight or you got to get on a boat, and it's gonna take forever to even get there on boat. And so it was a 2-hour flight from Jakarta to Ubud. I booked the night before on one of the local airlines, and the ticket cost me, I think, about $30-$40 for a last minute ticket. Once I woke up at 2 o'clock in the morning and realized it was my 8th day, I called down to the front desk. I was like, "Hey, listen, is it time for me to check out yet? Do y'all have my PCR COVID test back yet?" Because you have to take a COVID test coming into the hotel, and then you have to take a COVID test when you check out of the hotel for your quarantine. In that quarantine experience, of course, you get 3 meals each day. They wash 5 articles of your clothing, not 6. So if you got a pair of socks, that one sock is one article. The second sock is the second article. So just keep that in mind. And so whenever, and I'll just take you back a bit, whenever the housekeepers or the laundry pickup or the food delivery service would bring the food, it would be like Christmas because you got visitors coming to see you. And after being in quarantine by yourself in a room with no fresh air for 8 days, 7 days, 5 days, you are ready for some human interaction. So that night before, I called down to the front desk, made sure that they had my COVID test back. They said, yes, ma'am, we've had your COVID test back for hours. I said, okay, well, let me book my flight. I'd already booked a flight the night before. I changed it and got an even earlier flight, had all my stuff already packed up, washed my face, brushed my teeth, got in the elevator, and I was downstairs ready to get out of that room. Headed to the airport in Jakarta and prepared to board my flight to Bali. Once I got on the plane, I took a deep breath and decided I was going to sleep for those 2 hours until I got to Bali to experience Ubud. Once I got on the plane, settled, slept a while, I woke up right on time as we were circling around one of the biggest statues I've ever seen in my life. But once I realized that I had made it to Bali, I cried like a baby. I cried for the beauty of it, the green. I cried for the fact that I knew there was a choice that I was going to make that would have prevented me from even experiencing or seeing it based on the decision that my daughter made about being a mom and walking into motherhood. So I knew that being present and being there wasn't to be taken for granted because there were other decisions that could have been made that prevented me from being able to really fully realize my dream. So I cried like a baby. Landed there. And once I got there, I met a guy on the plane who was coming into a nearby city called Canggu. And he hooked me up with his driver. And so I was able to order a driver. This is all a part of me just kind of flowing, not really having a plan. Because what I didn't tell y'all is I had no specifics about Bali. I didn't know what kind of money they use. I didn't know the rules. I didn't know anything about what I probably should have known. I just followed my bliss and went for it. Sometimes you just go for it and, because asking all the questions and trying to get all the details and find out all the information along the way, a lot of times can stifle your forward movement or cause hesitation or cause you not to want to move forward because too much information causes you to think too much, and sometimes you just got to go for that shit. And so that's what I did. Once I arrived, got with the driver and headed for another hour drive from Denpasar, which is where the airport is once you land in Bali, from Denpasar to Ubud. So it was about a 45-minute to an hour drive. And once I landed, arrived at my villa location, my mouth was wide open from seeing on my way to the villa, seeing all the motorbikes. At first I thought, is there a motorbike convention in Bali? Like, why is everybody on bikes and where the cars at? It was like hundreds and hundreds of bikes on the road. I didn't know what was going on until I got to the villa and realized that's the primary mode of transportation for Indonesia, but also Asia in general. And so that was like a culture shock. I had to get used to that. And not just seeing one person on a scooter or on a motorbike, but seeing the mama, the daddy, the little baby on their hip, a dog on the side, a microwave, a couch, and a toddler in the front. Like, listen, this is a real situation. I love the Indonesian people. They are about making it happen. No excuse will do. So on one hand, it was a culture shock, but on the other hand, it inspired me to make it happen no matter what. So shout out to all my folks who are here, all the locals who make it happen no matter what. Once I arrived at the villa, I was met with the family who owns the villa. So there's all different kinds of living experiences that you can have. One is like the one that I have now. And this beautiful extra large villa. The one I stayed at initially was made for 1 to 2 people. And so You're going to see photos and pictures of it. But you have your pool in the front yard. You got your outdoor kitchen, which is something I had to get accustomed to because I didn't know that most of the kitchens were outdoors, or that most of your living would be felt in the villas in an outside experience. So that meant that, yes, you're going to experience insects and reptiles like geckos everywhere all day making sounds. You got ants, we had koi fish in the front yard. Of course, you got your pool, and then of course your coconuts. It's so many things to appreciate about this experience. But the biggest part about it is that even walking into already having a villa to live in and to stay in was a huge blessing. Shout out to T for making sure that I was taken care of. The villa looked more like a mini compound, but like a mini village, more than a compound, a mini village. So you walk in and you got your walkway with the front, we'll say the front desk, which looks more like a tiny house. And that's where the staff kind of stays and mix and mingle and make sure that you got everything you need and checks you in. Make sure you, of course, got your taxi paid for. I only came to Indonesia with USD, American money. I didn't know that I was supposed to change it out for IDR, which is your Indonesia currency. And so I had no money to pay the driver. Of course, they don't have Cash App or I didn't know of any way to transfer the money at that time. I didn't have a local bank account. And so the family at my villa had cash and was like, we'll just add it onto your bill. We'll go ahead and take care of that for you. And so they took care of it for me. But that was like another part of the culture shock. It's coming into a new place, having a blank slate, and not really knowing what to expect or what to do. So some of it was like ignorance is bliss. But then after a while, it became like a huge inconvenience. I'll talk to you more about that later. But once I got there, I arrived and I was welcomed by the family that hosts, that manages the villa, and also welcomed by my first beautiful black face, which was T, the same lady who I met in the Black in Bali community. And so her villa was situated and neighbored right next door to mine. So I had somebody who I could ask questions to, who I could walk right over out of my villa into her front yard and have conversation with, and just a grounding opportunity to feel safe and feel connected. I wasn't alone, and God made sure so. So on my first day of being in Ubud, I was able to travel and see things just from a whole different perspective. One of the other culture shocks for me was the driving. So shout out to T again for being my tour guide. She had rented a car, and so everyone drives on the left side of the street, and then the steering wheel is on the right side of the street in the car. And so there's this inside out experience that you're having while you're sitting in the car. And in my American experience, I'm thinking I'm supposed to be with the steering wheel in front of me if I'm on the left side, but I'm actually a passenger. And people are driving on that side while the steering wheel is on the right side. So that was a huge experience in itself. It was like, let me get my equilibrium right. So on that first day, she drugged me all up and through Ubud, from the markets to the restaurants. I was able to get a full experience. My first day felt like my first week. And then on day 2, I had the beautiful opportunity of being invited to a spades party. Shout out to all the beautiful black people who know how to get it in, even across the country, even across the world, rather. I was able to experience a spades party with some beautiful people where I met someone very special who has been a important part of my journey so far. It's been absolutely awesome. And then in that same week, right, so day 1, T took me all up and through the Ubud streets. Day 2, I was invited to a spades party where I met some additional beautiful black people. So by day 9, I had already been fully immersed and my community had expanded. I was invited to a little house party, also known as a kickback, with about 10 to 12 beautiful black people from all over the world. And so we ate good, laughed good, had good music, beautiful conversation. And then by the end of the night, there was talks about this trip being planned that that a few of them from the kickback were gonna take the next day to North Bali, to a part of the island called Lavina. And so it was very spontaneous and just like last minute. They was like, do you want to go? I was like, let's do it. So essentially I took day 10 to travel with 6 strangers, 6 people that I didn't even know, 5 to 6 people ended up being at the location. And we spent 3 nights and 4 days together at a whole nother part of the island. And my life and my journey through Bali was forever changed from that moment moving forward. I look forward to sharing the rest of this experience with you. It gets better, it gets more juicy, it gets more, oh my gosh, in the next episodes to come. So if you haven't already, make sure you buckle your seatbelt, and I look forward to seeing you in episode 3 of Becoming Precious, somewhere in Bali. Thank you for watching episode 2 of Becoming Precious, somewhere in Bali. In our next episode, I'll be sharing how love found me on this beautiful island and changed my life. Be sure to like, comment, and share, plus subscribe here on my YouTube channel to catch the next episode, bonus videos, and live Q&A. See you in episode 3. It's gonna be good.